Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I've been sitting on these stories for a while now, and honestly I wasn't sure if I should even share them. The Pacific Northwest has always had this reputation for being mysterious, right? But what I'm about to tell you goes way beyond that. These three accounts, they're different. They're the kind of thing that makes you question what's actually out there in those forests. I want to be clear about something. These aren't stories that have been twisted and retold 100 times. I'm talking about direct testimonies from people who experienced this stuff firsthand. There's this photographer who went to an old logging camp for work and walked into a nightmare. Then there's a researcher, a scientist, who found himself in a place where the normal rules just stopped applying. And this last one, a regular guy driving home who ended up God knows where. Some details have been changed, names and specific spots, because these people deserve their privacy. But what happened to them, that's exactly how they told it. The thing about those forests up there is they're ancient. They've seen things we can't even imagine, and sometimes people stumble into places they shouldn't. You'll understand what I mean after hearing these. If this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe. We do this kind of content all the time, real horror, the stuff that actually happened. Hit the bell too, you don't want to miss what's coming. This happened 2 years ago in the fall of 2022. I was 31 at the time, working as a documentary photographer out of Portland. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'd made a decent career photographing abandoned industrial sites all over the Pacific Northwest. Old mills, closed factories, that kind of thing. I'd explored maybe 50 or 60 locations by that point, so I thought I knew what I was doing. I had protocols, safety equipment, all of it. This particular trip was supposed to be routine. I'd heard about this abandoned logging camp maybe 40 miles east of Mount Hood through a contact at the Historical Society. The place had been operational from the late 40s until 1983, when it shut down after what the records called a series of accidents. That always intrigued me, the vague language in old documents. I did my research, got the property records, made sure I wasn't trespassing on anything actively monitored. The plan was simple. Drive out there, spend 2 days shooting the ruins, camp on site to get those early morning shots, then head home. The drive out was fine, typical Oregon autumn weather, misty, temperatures in the 50s. The camp itself was incredible from a photography standpoint. All these structures slowly being reclaimed by the forest, thick moss covering everything, old equipment rusting into the ground. I spent the whole first day just walking around, taking shots of collapsed bunkhouses and the old cookhouse. There was this eerie stillness to the place though. No birds, no wind sounds, just this heavy silence. But abandoned places often feel like that, so I didn't think much of it. I set up my tent between what used to be the main gathering area and the foreman's office. Good wind protection, clear view of the whole site. I'd done this exact thing dozens of times before in abandoned places. Made dinner, reviewed my photos, felt pretty good about the work. It was around 10 p.m. when things started feeling wrong. I was in my tent going through the day's shots when I heard machinery, not the creaking of old metal in the wind, but actual grinding, rhythmic mechanical sounds. My first thought was maybe there was some illegal logging operation nearby, but the sounds were coming from inside the camp, from the old mill building specifically. I grabbed my flashlight and satellite phone and went to check it out, which looking back was probably stupid, but I was curious. The mill was the biggest structure left standing, and through the broken windows I could see lights moving around inside. Modern camping lanterns, not flashlights. I could hear voices too, at least 4 or 5 men talking in low tones. I crept closer and heard one of them, older guy, sounded like he was giving instructions. They were talking about a harvest and keeping to some kind of schedule. I figured they were stripping copper or metal from the old equipment, illegal salvage. I was about to back away quietly when one voice said something that made my stomach drop. He asked if everything from the last one had been processed and was ready for transport. The way he said it, so casual, talking about processing and the others. I don't know, something about it felt deeply wrong, but I also thought, this could be evidence of illegal activity. I had my camera with night vision capability. Maybe I should document this and report it to the rangers in the morning. So I positioned myself behind some old equipment and started taking photos. That's when my camera flash accidentally went off. Everything went silent inside the mill. Then I heard someone say there's someone out there. Flashlight beams started sweeping toward my position. I ran back to my tent, but I immediately realized I'd left obvious evidence I was there. My tent, my gear, everything was visible. I could hear them moving through the camp, calling out that they knew I was there and I should come out friendly. Instead of grabbing my emergency beacon and running into the forest, which is what I should have done, I hid in the collapsed foreman's office. I thought they'd search around and leave. Through gaps in the walls, I watched them find my tent and go through my stuff. That older voice said, "Photographer from Portland, here alone, that's unfortunate timing for her." Another guy asked what they should do. The older voice said, "Same as always, can't have witnesses, not with tomorrow's delivery." That's when I understood this wasn't about salvaging metal. I'd stumbled onto something much worse. The way they talked about deliveries and processing, the isolated location. I realized they were using this abandoned camp as some kind of hub. One of them started systematically checking buildings. I knew the office would be searched in minutes. I decided running into the forest was better than being cornered, but when I moved, the floorboards creaked loud. "Found her," someone yelled. "Office building." I burst out the back entrance and ran for the tree line. 3 of them chased me with powerful flashlights and radios. I'm pretty athletic and I know basic wilderness survival. The adrenaline was definitely helping, but they knew the terrain. I could hear them on the radios coordinating, saying I was heading toward the ravine and to cut me off at the logging road. They had vehicles positioned around the perimeter. This wasn't improvised. Running through old-growth forest in pitch darkness is terrifying. I was using just moonlight filtering through the canopy. I could hear them behind me talking about cutting me off. I stumbled over something in the dark and fell hard. It was a backpack, badly weathered. Inside was an ID and some gear, dates back several months. Another photographer. I remembered seeing news about him going missing, presumed lost in the wilderness. Right then I understood this had happened before. But then things got stranger. Deeper in the forest I started seeing these lights between the trees. Not flashlights, wrong color, pale blue-green, moving on their own. I heard sounds that didn't belong out there, rhythmic drumming, chanting in a language I didn't recognize. Behind me, one of the men screamed and the sound just cut off. I heard another guy yelling, "It's awake, we need to get back to the boundary." I stumbled into this clearing that wasn't on any of my maps. There were symbols carved into trees all around it, similar to indigenous warning markers I'd seen before. In the center was what looked like an offering site, fresh items mixed with objects that were decades old, personal effects from missing hikers spanning years. These men weren't just using an abandoned camp. They'd chosen this specific place because something else lived here and they were feeding it. Behind me, the men's voices getting closer, desperate and scared. Around me, those blue-green lights converging, temperature dropping fast. The trees above were shaking despite no wind, branches reaching down like they were alive. I was being herded towards something. Then I saw it, this massive shape moving between trees. Too tall, proportions all wrong. Not attacking directly, but guiding my path, preventing escape. I could feel its attention on me, ancient and hungry. The men were yelling, "Just let it take her, that's the arrangement." I still had my emergency beacon in my jacket. I activated it, but knew search and rescue was hours away minimum. I remembered from my research the camp had an old concrete bunker, ammunition storage from the logging days. If I could reach it, maybe that steel door would protect me. I ran parallel to the men, using their flashlights to navigate by avoiding them. Crashed through undergrowth until I found it, half buried, door rusted but intact. I got inside and barricaded it with debris. I spent hours in that bunker while that thing circled outside. I could hear it testing the door, the walls, trying to find a way in. I heard the men discussing whether to wait or flee. The leader said they were done, it was unstable, they'd violated the pattern, burn it all and disappear. I heard vehicles leaving, then just silence except for that thing outside. As gray light started coming through the ventilation gaps, the presence faded. The unnatural cold went away. Normal forest sounds came back gradually. I waited a full 30 minutes after sunrise before coming out. The forest looked normal again. That clearing with the offerings had vanished, same location but just regular undergrowth now. Search and rescue found me about 2 hours later using the beacon coordinates. Rangers and police investigated thoroughly. They found evidence of recent activity, tire tracks, burned documents, signs of occupation. My tent and equipment were gone, but no bodies, no obvious proof of what I'd seen. They did find that backpack I'd stumbled over though, matched the missing photographer from 6 months earlier. The FBI got involved because of the trafficking implications. Their investigation found a pattern of disappearances near that valley going back decades. The logging camp had 17 accidental deaths between 1947 and 1983. Indigenous tribal leaders confirmed that valley was traditionally forbidden ground. They'd warned the logging company back then, but they were ignored. 3 weeks after my escape, authorities raided a property 100 miles away and arrested 8 men connected to a trafficking network. None of them would talk about the logging camp. The operation had been running for at least 15 years using remote wilderness locations. They found other sites, but the logging camp was abandoned by the network after I escaped. I moved to Seattle after that, couldn't continue with abandoned location photography. The PTSD was severe, nightmares about the forest, that thing hunting me. My emergency beacon saved my life. Rangers told me if I'd tried hiking out in the darkness, I never would have made it. I still have scars on my face and arms from running through those trees. The logging camp was demolished by federal authorities, but hikers still report strange lights in that valley. 2 more people have disappeared there since my escape. Search and rescue crews refuse to enter after dark now. The local indigenous community performed ceremonies to reinforce spiritual boundaries. And I still get messages, anonymous ones, photos of that bunker I hid in taken recently at night. There's something massive visible in the background of those photos. Whatever was out there is still there. The arrangement those men made, I don't think it ended when they got arrested. Some places in those forests are older than we can understand, and they have their own rules. I learned that the hard way. This one happened 5 years back, winter of 2019. I'm Dr. James Whitmore. I was 42 then, marine biologist out of Eugene with about 15 years of field experience under my belt. I'd done remote research all over the place, Alaska, South American jungle canopy, you name it. Isolation never bothered me. Actually, I preferred it most of the time. So when this private environmental group hired me to do a solo study of the Olympic Peninsula watershed, I jumped at it. The setup was straightforward. 4 weeks alone at this old Forest Service cabin deep in Olympic National Forest, maybe 18 miles from the nearest road. My job was documenting water quality, wildlife activity, climate change impacts on the salmon spawning areas. They'd helicopter me in with all my supplies, scientific equipment, satellite communication gear, food, fuel, everything I'd need, then pick me up exactly 4 weeks later. The cabin had been used off and on for decades by different researchers. It was pretty well maintained, had solar panels, a wood stove, water filtration from a nearby creek. The first week went exactly as planned. I established my baseline measurements, documented the wildlife, saw Roosevelt elk, black-tailed deer, tons of bird species. The cabin was comfortable. The weather was typical Pacific Northwest in winter, heavy rain, mist, temps in the 40s. That creek running about 50 yards from the cabin provided this constant soothing background noise. The isolation felt peaceful, exactly what I expected and wanted. I did my daily satellite check-ins with the research coordinator. Everything was completely routine. Night of day 9, I woke up and something was wrong. The creek had stopped. I don't mean the sound was quiet, I mean it had completely stopped flowing. No rain sounds either, no wind, no animal calls, absolute silence. I thought maybe my ears were blocked or something, but I tested and my hearing was fine. It wasn't that sounds were faint, they were just gone entirely. I went outside to check the creek. My flashlight showed water still in the channel, but it wasn't moving at all. It wasn't frozen, the temperature was 45 degrees. The water was just sitting there, completely motionless. I touched it and it was liquid, normal temperature. It moved when I disturbed it, but then immediately settled back to stillness. Water doesn't do that, it flows downhill because of gravity. This was defying basic physics. Then I tried to document it with my video camera and all my electronics died at once. Satellite phone, GPS, digital camera, even my LED lights, everything just went black. The solar equipment showed no problems, batteries tested as fully charged, but nothing would turn on. Screens stayed dark, devices completely unresponsive. My mechanical wristwatch still worked though, showed 2:47 a.m. I looked up at the sky and that was wrong too. Stars were visible, which was unusual because we normally had heavy cloud cover, but the star positions were wrong. The constellations didn't match what should be in the northern hemisphere winter sky. I checked my compass and the needle was just spinning slowly, never settling on magnetic north. I went back inside, lit oil lamps since those still worked, and tried to rationalize what was happening. Maybe some kind of electromagnetic anomaly, but that wouldn't stop water from flowing or affect a mechanical compass. I thought maybe seismic activity, but the ground wasn't shaking. Nothing made sense. Then I looked out the window and realized the trees were wrong. Not wrong species, wrong positions. There was this big old hemlock that had been 100 yards north of the cabin. Now it was 100 yards south. A distinctive lightning-struck snag tree was on the opposite side of the clearing from where it should be. I had topographic maps and sketches from my first day. The current view didn't match. The forest had rearranged itself. I convinced myself I was just disoriented, maybe mild carbon monoxide from the stove, but my detectors showed normal levels. I decided to wait for dawn and reassess in daylight. At what my watch said was 6:15 a.m., the sky did get lighter, but the light came from the north instead of the east. And when full daylight arrived, it wasn't normal sunlight. Everything had this flat gray quality. Shadows pointed in multiple directions at once. The temperature hadn't changed despite sunrise. I understood then this wasn't a natural phenomenon. Something was fundamentally wrong with reality itself. I went outside and the forest was definitely rearranged. Landmarks were in wrong positions, distances had changed. The creek bed was completely dry now, no water anywhere. The plant life looked slightly off, leaves had this odd sheen, bark textures were subtly different. Nothing was dead, just altered. Inside the station I found notebooks I hadn't brought, additional ones on the shelf, handwriting that wasn't mine, dated from 2007. I read the entries and they described the same phenomena I was experiencing. The researcher wrote, Day 12, reality is becoming unstable, distances don't match measurements, need to document this. The final entry said, Day 15, I understand now, this place exists in multiple states simultaneously. The station is an anchor point, don't let go of the anchor. There was no record of that researcher ever being retrieved or filing an official report. I checked the creek again. Now it had water, but it was flowing uphill, actually traveling from lower elevation to higher elevation. I put a leaf in the water and watched it move upstream. Over the next few hours, time became unstable. My watch showed 2:30 p.m., but the gray light hadn't changed at all since dawn. No sun position shift, no temperature variation. Then I noticed my daily marks on the cabin wall tracking days. There were 23 marks. But my log showed only 9 days had passed. Either I'd lost 2 weeks with no memory or time itself was wrong here. I started seeing figures at the edge of my vision between trees, not quite human-shaped, proportions wrong, movements too smooth. Whenever I looked directly, there was nothing there, but peripherally I could see them constantly. At least 7 distinct figures maintaining a consistent distance from the cabin, just watching. On schedule, I tried my satellite check-in even though the equipment was dead, but I heard a voice, not through the phone, just from somewhere. Research Station 7, this is base. Why haven't you checked in for 18 days? I said, this is Whitmore. Equipment is malfunctioning. I'm on day 10. The voice said, negative, Station 7. Your pickup was scheduled yesterday. Helicopter couldn't locate you. We're sending a ground team. Then the voice cut off. I went back to that previous researcher's notebook and read more carefully. The handwriting gradually changed through the entries. The later entries, the handwriting matched my own. The final entries described accepting that the station existed between moments, described the figures as residents of the transitional space. The last entry said there is no escape, the forest is infinite in directions that don't exist, the station is the only fixed point, must maintain anchor, must not let others come here. The signature at the end was Dr. James Whitmore, day 67. I hadn't found a previous researcher's notebook. I'd found my own from some future or alternate version of events. The station existed in some kind of temporal loop where I was experiencing multiple timelines at once. Other researchers had been lost here, erased from normal time. The figures started approaching the cabin for the first time, moving closer, and I could see them more clearly now. Human-shaped but stretched, faces that shifted between expressions. Some wore Forest Service uniforms from different decades. Others had civilian clothing from various eras. I recognized one of them. It was me, but 20 years older. The cabin started showing different time periods simultaneously. One wall had fresh paint, another showed decades of decay. Equipment appeared and disappeared, sometimes my modern gear, sometimes older stuff from different years. The interior shifted between maintained research station and abandoned ruin, back and forth. I understood the trap then. The station was an anchor point between normal reality and something else. Staying inside meant being fixed in place, protected but trapped forever. Going outside into that forest meant entering space where direction and time and cause and effect didn't work. The figures were other researchers lost in the anomaly, existing in fractured states across different timelines. I remembered the notebook's advice about maintaining the anchor, but also must not let others come here. A ground rescue team was coming. They'd be trapped too. I needed to either escape before they arrived or prevent them from reaching the station. My satellite beacon was still active. It had a mechanical trigger. I could set it to maximum strength, but I could also burn the cabin, destroy the anchor point. Maybe the anomaly would collapse, or at least prevent others from being trapped. But destroying my shelter in this impossible place might kill me too. I gathered all my research notes, my log, that future notebook, put them in a waterproof case, triggered the beacon manually to maximum signal strength. Then I started fires throughout the cabin using lamp oil, research materials, anything flammable. Either this would bring immediate rescue or destroy the anchor and reset reality. The cabin burned fast. The flames were wrong colors, shifting between orange and gray-blue. Smoke rose and fell at the same time. The figures in the forest just watched. As the cabin burned, the environment destabilized further. The forest flickered between different seasons. The gray light cracked like breaking glass with normal daylight bleeding through. The ground shifted under me, not earthquake, but terrain itself changing. The figures began fading, becoming transparent. Then there was this sudden violent transition, like falling through ice, and everything went black. I woke up lying in normal forest with normal daylight and normal sounds. Heavy rain, wind in the trees, creek flowing naturally. My watch showed 3:20 p.m., but I had no idea what day. I was covered in soot, clothing singed, burns on my hands. The waterproof case with notebooks was clutched against my chest. I hiked toward the beacon signal using normal navigation. The forest was normal now, landmarks in correct positions. After 6 hours, I reached the original helicopter landing site and found a search and rescue team setting up base camp. According to them, it was day 31. I was 1 week overdue. But my log and memory only had 10 or 11 days, missing 20 days with no memory. They'd been searching for 2 days after finally locating my beacon. When they went to the cabin coordinates, there was nothing there, just old foundation stones that had been there for decades. No evidence of recent fire, no modern equipment, nothing suggesting recent occupation. Medical evaluation showed severe dehydration and malnutrition consistent with 3 weeks of inadequate food. My burns were real and recent, soot in my lungs from smoke inhalation, but I also had frostbite on my feet despite above freezing temperatures the whole time. The waterproof case had my official log ending at day 11, that previous researcher's notebook, 47 pages of observations in my handwriting describing the anomaly, and photos from my mechanical backup camera showing impossible things. The cabin in various states of decay simultaneously, the figures at the forest edge, water flowing uphill, my own reflection aged decades. Forest Service records confirmed 7 previous researchers had used that station since 1956. Only 3 completed their research successfully. Of the other 4, 2 were never recovered. 2 were recovered confused about elapsed time. A researcher in 1983 disappeared entirely. Rescue found only foundation stones. The station was officially decommissioned in 1995. No record of my organization receiving permission to use it. I lost my academic position. The research organization denied sending me to Olympic Peninsula. No record of my contract, communications, or helicopter transport existed in their systems. I still have the notebooks and photos. That future notebook contains entries through day 127, final pages describing accepting integration with the transitional space. The handwriting in those final pages shifts between mine and several other distinct styles. I occasionally get mail, postcards with photos of the abandoned station, postmarked from different years, some dated in the future. Most recent showed the station rebuilt and occupied, dated 2031. Handwritten message said, "The anchor is being maintained. You will return to complete the cycle." Signed, JW. The Forest Service quietly removed all documentation of that station from public records. They officially declared that area permanently closed, but rangers privately warn hikers certain valleys just don't feel right. People still wander off marked trails and disappear. Some return days later with no memory. Others never come back. This happened last year, November 2023. I'm Michael Torres, 26, freelance graphic designer working out of Bellingham. I drive all over the Pacific Northwest for client meetings, totally comfortable with rural roads, mountain passes, all that. This particular night I was heading home from Forks on the western Olympic Peninsula. I just finished a meeting that ran late, left around 6:30 p.m., already dark because it was November. My normal route was Highway 101 to Aberdeen, then I-5 north to Bellingham, about 5 hours total. Weather was typical misty, occasional rain, nothing I hadn't driven through 100 times before. I was in my 2018 Civic, well-maintained, full tank of gas. Phone was at 78%, had GPS navigation running. First hour was completely normal, light traffic like you'd expect on a weeknight. I grabbed coffee at a gas station in Aberdeen around 7:45, texted my girlfriend I'd be home by midnight. GPS showed 3 hours and 40 minutes remaining. Around 8:30 I was approaching where Highway 12 branches east and my GPS suddenly rerouted. Turn right for faster route, save 25 minutes. The new route showed State Route 107 to some mountain road I hadn't taken before. But GPS does this all the time in the Northwest, suggesting alternates based on traffic or construction or whatever. The road looked legitimate on the map, paved, designated state highway. Getting home 25 minutes earlier seemed worth it, so I took the turn. First 10 minutes seemed totally fine. Paved road, occasional reflector posts, proper highway signage. But I wasn't seeing any other cars despite this supposedly being a faster route. No houses either, no driveways, no signs anyone lived out there. Just walls of dark forest on both sides and the road climbing gradually into the foothills. After 15 minutes, my GPS started glitching. The blue navigation line kept redrawing itself, suggesting U-turns, then correcting again. My phone signal dropped to no service, which is normal for remote areas. GPS still showed my position, but the map background wasn't loading right. The mist got really thick, visibility down to maybe 50 feet. Trees were pressing closer to the road, branches hanging over and creating this tunnel effect. The road condition got worse, still paved but full of potholes and cracks, poorly maintained. The reflector posts became less frequent and then just stopped. The yellow center line was so faded you could barely see it. According to the GPS label, I should have been passing through a small town, but there was no town. Just a few abandoned structures barely visible in the mist. The buildings were wrong though, two old architectural styles from the 40s or 50s. I saw an old gas station with the pump still standing, completely rusted, windows broken out. No indication anything had been functioning there recently. Then I started seeing these weird road signs, hand-painted, not official looking. One said welcome to some town name that wasn't on my GPS. Another said speed limit dawn to dusk only, didn't even specify a number. One said stay on pavement, forest closed to outsiders. Another said next services none. Some had additional warnings spray painted over them, turn back and go home. That's when I really started feeling uneasy. I came around a curve and saw a pickup truck on the roadside with its hood up and flashlights visible. Two people standing beside it, waving for me to stop. My first instinct was to help, but something felt wrong. The truck looked operational, not actually broken down. The people wore dark clothing and I couldn't see their faces clearly. As I got closer, one of them stepped directly into the road with both arms raised. I slowed down but didn't stop. Something about it felt staged. As I drove around them, they didn't move or react, just stood there completely still. In my rear view, I saw one of them raise a radio to their face. Then the pickup's lights came on, engine started, and it began following me. I accelerated, trying to put distance between us. The road started branching off, multiple unmarked intersections. My GPS was completely useless now, showed me in the middle of a blank area with no roads. I took what looked like the main route at the first intersection. The pickup followed, staying at a consistent distance, never trying to pass or catch up. They were hurting me. I tried to turn around at a wide spot, but a second vehicle appeared from a side road and blocked me. Now I had two vehicles following, one on each side, boxing me in and forcing me to keep going forward. After another 15 minutes, I came out into this large clearing and saw a settlement. Maybe 20 or 30 buildings arranged in a circle around a central area. Everything was lit up with generator-powered floodlights and bonfires. I could see dozens of people moving around in organized activity. The road led straight into the settlement with no other route visible. The two vehicles behind me pulled alongside, boxing me in. More vehicles appeared ahead, blocking any forward path. I was completely surrounded in the center of this place. I kept my engine running and doors locked, phone desperately searching for signal. People approached from all sides, but not aggressively. They were dressed in this mix of modern and outdated clothing, work jackets, flannel, some stuff that looked homemade, all ages from kids to elderly. Everyone had the same blank, neutral, expectant expression. An older guy, maybe 60s with a gray beard, walked up and gestured for me to lower my window. He introduced himself as Thomas and said, "Welcome, traveler. You took our road. That means you're looking for us." I told him no, my GPS rerouted me. I just needed directions back to I-5. He said the world sent you here for a reason. You're tired of your life, seeking community and meaning. That's why the road opened for you. I insisted I was just lost and needed directions. He said there are no coincidences. You were guided here. We all were. This is family. He said stay for the evening. Understand what we offer. If you still want to leave at dawn, you can. I refused and tried to drive forward, but the vehicles wouldn't move. More people gathered around my car, surrounding it completely. Thomas said they don't force anyone, but I couldn't leave until I understood. The forest doesn't let the ignorant pass. It was an implied threat more than just social pressure. I sat there with the engine idling for 30 minutes while they waited. My fuel gauge showed a quarter tank, and I realized they knew I'd eventually have to conserve gas. Thomas offered to let me join them for their evening meal, said they'd answer my questions, then I could decide if I wanted to see the morning road. The morning road, like different roads, appeared at different times. I finally agreed, turned off my car, locked it, kept my keys in my pocket. They led me into the largest building, a communal dining hall. Inside there were over 50 people, multiple generations. The meal was simple: venison, foraged vegetables, preserved foods. Everyone was friendly but intense, kept asking about my dissatisfaction with modern life. They kept mentioning the old ways and sustainable community and separating from corrupt society. Several people shared stories about how they'd all been guided here by the roads. Each one claimed they'd been lost, rerouted by GPS, found this settlement. None of them had planned to be here, but all chose to stay. I started noticing wrong details. No children under maybe 7 years old, the youngest were school age or older. No pregnant women that I could see. Some people wore identical necklaces with wooden pendants carved with symbols. Others had tattoos of the same symbols on their wrists. The dining hall had photographs on the walls, group photos dating back decades. But the same faces appeared in photos from different decades, not aging right. Thomas appeared in a photo dated 1987, looking the same age as he did now. After the meal, Thomas gave me a tour, showed me workshops, living quarters, generators, supplies, everything neat and organized and self-sufficient. But there was one locked building at the edge of the settlement. He said it was storage for winter supplies. Through the window I glimpsed medical equipment and restraint beds. Thomas noticed me looking and said sometimes people need time to adjust. Transition can be difficult. They took me to guest quarters, a small cabin with a bed and wood stove. Thomas said, "Rest, morning brings clarity, the road will present your choice." But as he left, I heard the door lock from outside. I was a prisoner dressed up as a guest. I looked out the window and saw armed patrols walking the perimeter. This wasn't a commune, this was a cult that trapped travelers. From the window, I watched the settlement activity change. The people who'd seemed friendly at dinner now had different energy, ritualistic and controlled. The bonfires in the central area grew larger and people gathered around them. Chanting started, rhythmic and haunting, in a language I didn't recognize. Then I saw them lead someone into the central area, a person in modern clothing, clearly just arrived, struggling. Another trapped traveler being integrated. I understood they were grooming me, softening me up with hospitality before forced conversion. I checked my phone, still no signal, but GPS data was cached. I traced my route from Highway 101. The turn onto SR 107 existed on maps, but the road I'd actually driven wasn't on any map, not even on satellite view. I'd somehow gotten onto a road that shouldn't exist, or they had technology to manipulate GPS and create phantom routes to lure travelers onto their controlled territory. Around 2 a.m. I woke to sounds outside, looked through the window and saw 5 or 6 people approaching, led by Thomas. They were carrying items, food, clothing, those wooden pendant necklaces. I heard Thomas say he'll accept by morning. They always do. The preparation ritual ensures compliance. They were coming to perform some ritual on me while I slept. I had maybe minutes before they entered. The cabin's back window faced the forest, not the settlement. It was nailed shut, but the wood was old and deteriorating. I used the metal bed frame to pry it open. The wood splintered but gave way. I heard voices at the front door, a key in the lock. I dove through the window, hit the ground hard and rolled. Immediately there were shouts and flashlights and pursuit began. I ran into the forest with no plan except getting away. Behind me was coordinated pursuit. They were experienced at this. I could hear dogs barking. They had hunting dogs, but the heavy mist and thick underbrush helped me stay hidden. I ran for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, completely disoriented. I stopped behind a fallen log to catch my breath and heard them on radios saying he's heading toward the boundary, cut him off at the creek. There was a defined perimeter to their territory. I found the creek by nearly falling into it, steep bank with rushing water. The pursuers were very close, flashlight beams sweeping through the trees. I crossed the creek waist-deep, freezing water that almost swept me away. That crossing helped. The dogs lost my scent and the pursuers had to spread out to find a crossing point. I gained distance and kept moving downstream. After another hour of stumbling through darkness, I heard highway traffic sounds. Real highway, actual cars, the normal world. I emerged onto Interstate 5. I recognized it, flagged down a semi-truck around 4:30 a.m. The driver took one look at me, soaked and muddy and bleeding and cut up, and asked what happened. I told him my car broke down and I got lost trying to find help. I didn't tell the truth because who would believe it? He took me to Castle Rock. The sun was rising, everything felt normal again. I called my girlfriend with a simplified story about car problems, reported to police that my vehicle was abandoned on a forest road, gave them a vague location. Police took the report seriously because of my condition and sent patrols to search. They found nothing. No settlement, no buildings, no roads matching my description. GPS data from my phone showed me on SR 107, which exists, but the location I described had no structures on aerial imagery. 3 days later, police found my Civic on a Forest Service road 40 miles from where I said I'd been. The vehicle was undamaged, doors locked, keys still missing because I had them. But the interior was filthy, mud on the seats, moss on the dashboard, heavy moss and lichen growth on the exterior. Forensics said the moss growth was consistent with the vehicle being stationary for 2 to 3 months, not 2 to 3 days. No explanation for how it got there. My injuries were real, cuts and bruises, mild hypothermia. My clothing was soaked and muddy and torn. I had ticks and plant burrs from Olympic Peninsula forest species. But blood work showed trace amounts of unknown organic compounds, possibly hallucinogens. Doctors couldn't identify the substances. My girlfriend confirmed I'd texted her at 8 p.m. from Aberdeen. Police found no cell signal was possible on the route I described after leaving Highway 101, yet my texts had sent with correct timestamps. Gas station security footage showed my car at 7:42 p.m. Next confirmed sighting was the truck driver at 4:28 a.m., 8 hours completely unaccounted for. State Patrol found 14 similar reports over the past 20 years. Drivers reporting GPS rerouting them to settlements that shouldn't exist. Some returned like me, others were never seen again. Common elements were Pacific Northwest logging country, nighttime driving, GPS malfunctions, mysterious communities. No settlements ever found during searches. A private investigator my parents hired discovered historical records of a group called the Forest Brotherhood, a separatist group active in the 70s through 90s. They believed in living between worlds and allegedly used ham radio and early GPS jamming to lure travelers. The group supposedly disbanded in 1996 after an FBI raid, but no arrests were made and members vanished. 2 weeks after I got home, I received a package, no return address, postmarked from Forks. Inside was a wooden pendant matching the ones the settlement members wore. It had carved symbols including my initials and the date I'd been there. A handwritten note said, "You were chosen. The road will call you again. You will return. Family is forever." Signed, Thomas. I moved to Seattle, won't drive rural roads at night anymore. I have permanent anxiety about GPS navigation, only use printed maps now. I sold the Civic, couldn't stand being in it. Had nightmares about being back there for months. Eventually did hypnosis therapy to try to recover the missing time. Under hypnosis, I remembered the hours in the settlement were longer than I thought, being given food and drink that altered my consciousness. Hazy memories of a ritual at the bonfire. Thomas saying, "You're marked now. Part of you will always be with us." Other people in that locked building, people who'd resisted being treated. My car still has unexplained issues. The odometer shows 300 plus miles driven during the missing hours, but forensics confirmed most mileage was with the vehicle stationary, wheels spinning like it was on a lift. Sometimes the GPS activates on its own and shows routes to locations that don't exist. I occasionally get calls from blocked numbers with chanting in the background. Police classified it as unexplained event, but kept the investigation open because of missing persons correlations. State Patrol quietly distributed internal memos about GPS anomalies on certain backroads. They recommend not relying solely on GPS in Olympic and Cascade wilderness areas. I still have the pendant. I'm afraid to destroy it, but sometimes I wear it under my shirt. Feels like protection somehow. 3 other people contacted me through a support group with identical stories. We've formed an informal network trying to piece together what happened. 2 of them also received pendants in the mail. All 4 of us occasionally see the same faces from our settlements in public in Seattle, Portland, Olympia. The faces never acknowledge us, but they always smile slightly, knowingly. I believe now the settlement isn't in one fixed place. It moves, uses the road network, exists in between spaces. The cult's been operating for decades, slowly growing by trapping travelers, and they always get their people back eventually. Last month, my girlfriend was driving alone at night on I-5. Her GPS suggested a faster route, take the exit to SR 107. She knew enough to refuse and stay on the highway, but for 20 miles her GPS kept suggesting the same turn. And she swears in her rearview mirror she saw a pickup truck with no plates following her. It followed until she reached a populated area near Tacoma, then vanished at the next exit. Thomas was right, family is forever. They're patient, they'll wait, the road will call again.